I've been thinking a lot about how Rogue One ends and A New Hope begins lately. You've heard the fanboy criticism, right? Rogue One allegedly makes the start of A New Hope make no sense. Well, as a refresher, A New Hope begins with a small ship called the Tantive 4 being boarded by Darth Vader. The rebels and the stormtroopers have a shootout over who has the worst helmet, and no surprise here, the troops with the full body armor win. Vader suspects Princess Leia and the others aboard are part of the Rebel Alliance and that they have the stolen plans for the Death Star. How he knows this was not originally explained, but it has never mattered. Due to the ending of Rogue One, we now discover that Darth Vader doesn't simply suspect Leia and company are rebels. He and his stormtroopers have chased them down following the rebels' theft of the Death Star plans. Darth Vader racks up a lot of kills for his high score. The Tantive 4 disembarks from a larger rebel ship immediately after recovering the plans, and Leia and company get away temporarily, at least until the start of A New Hope, presumably only a few minutes later in the Star Wars chronology. Now, because of this, Star Wars fans say that this makes the interaction between Vader and Leia make no sense. Vader points his finger at Leia and says,
"You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away!"
But Leia claims both ignorance and innocence. At a glance, this is what obnoxious YouTubers who like to say ding consider a plot hole, an overused term that often confuses minor discrepancies or gaps that are easily explained away with massive mistakes that break the narrative. If Darth Vader watched the Tantive 4 escape with the secret plans and just force murdered a bunch of dudes wearing the exact same uniforms as the men that are now on the ship he just boarded, the dialogue between himself and Princess Leia might seem strange to some. It's a prequel to original trilogy discrepancy of sorts that hinges on audience interpretation of the scene. So, is this a minor discrepancy, meaning something that can be explained away, or a narrative-breaking plot hole that ruins the movie or makes it untenable? It's a lie with no chance of being believed. But that's only if you look at it that way and don't offer any other explanation. Movies mandate a lot of shorthand due to it being a visual medium, so by its very nature it cannot, or at least should not, have too much exposition that would slow down the momentum. The opening crawl is enough as is. But people need their headcanon, right? So in an effort to have Star Wars make sense and prove that the film does not need to hold our hands and explain every last detail to us, I offer this exercise in filling in the gaps ourselves, since the movie does not, and frankly does not need to. I will draw from the real-world, mundane equivalent of an Imperial starship boarding the rebel ship. A police officer pulling over a car in America. Stay with me, this will make sense in the end. Now, how can the dialogue between Darth Vader and Princess Leia be explained away? Leia lies and admits to nothing, even though, because of the events of Rogue One, she now has been retconned into knowing she has been caught red-handed. Well, we need to look at a similar situation in a real-world context and determine how this would play out. Leia's interaction with Vader is exactly how anyone with any sense would play it. Anyone who has ever been pulled over by the cops knows that when the police officer asks, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" you never tell them why you suspect you were pulled over, because that can be construed as an admission of guilt. The police officer is asking you this question in hopes of making you say either the very reason he pulled you over, or admit to an additional infraction. If you ever have a chance of fighting the ticket in court, or God forbid, the arrest, anything that you said previously that could be seen as an acknowledgement that you committed the crime could be used against you, no matter how small the violation. So you speed by mistake, you hear the sirens, you pull over. When the cop asks you, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" you should not say you were speeding. You should say, "No, officer, why is that?" Or when the cop asks, "Do you know how fast you were going?" do not give an estimate, especially if you aren't sure of the exact speed limit on that particular road. You say, "No, I do not." If you tell the officer what you think you did wrong and this goes sideways and ends up in court, or if you want to fight a $500 ticket in traffic court so you can actually pay your rent this month, you now have a recorded admission either from the officer's recollection or a dash cam, body cam, etc. When a patrolman asks you those questions, it is because they are trained to do so to make this go the way they want it to, and not for it to go the way you want it to. They have quotas, and they need to meet them one way or another. Police departments that claim they don't have quotas are basically lying to you. Some departments will instead call them productivity goals, or other euphemisms instead to get around illegal ticket quotas. For example, it is technically illegal to have official quotas in the state of New York, but it still happens and is only occasionally brought to court. Despite laws and lawsuits, this continues due to internal police mandates that skirt around the law. In other states, it's just the law, it's official, and there's nothing to be done about it. Quotas and other practices meant to cause more tickets and fines, depending on the state, are either de jure, meaning the practice is legally recognized and acceptable, or de facto, meaning the same or similar practices exist even if they are not legally recognized. If quotas are illegal, police departments still generally operate under a similar but legally distinct version of the concept in order to avoid their own legal ramifications. In 2013, the city of Atlanta came up with a plan to tie police pay increases to ticket revenue. In the state of Arizona, legislation to ban quotas was passed in early 2015, but the state's governor vetoed the bill. In short, police officers are financially incentivized, or at least mandated by their superiors, to charge you with as much as possible. An officer enforcing a traffic stop is also looking for furtive movements in order to search your car, which can include moving your shoulder the wrong way. Yes, seriously, look it up. Police can't search your car without probable cause, but it really does not take much for a police officer to create an excuse for a search under what they consider reasonable suspicion. Police officers will look for anything even remotely incriminating that's in plain view that could be enough to argue reasonable suspicion. An empty beer can, for example, even if it is weeks old and you are stone cold sober, could be enough for the officer to search you. An officer who has any reason to suspect you might be dangerous has a right to conduct a pat-down search of your clothing, and the officer is the one who gets to decide whether or not you are suspicious enough for said search to occur. I was born in Baltimore. We have an uncomfortable relationship with the police, the apotheosis of this being the aftermath of the death of Freddie Gray in police custody. We mistrust the police so much in Baltimore that we took over the city. We rebelled, frankly, in hopes that it might enact change for our city.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Well, we tried, but the the Army National Guard showed up. So, when Leia gets pulled over by the Imperial ship, even though she knows she got caught, she knows Vader knows exactly what she did, it still doesn't matter. You never implicate yourself to law enforcement. Leia didn't steal the plans, Jyn Erso did. At most, she's an accessory or in possession of stolen property, which Vader and his stormtroopers presently cannot find because R2-D2 has the plans and he's on Tatooine. If she admits everything, she might believe there could be even greater consequences. In the real world, police officers will sometimes act as though they might change their minds if you cooperate, but this is a tactic to get information or an admission out of you. Leia keeps her mouth shut. Now, you might say, the Empire is evil, and they don't care about due process. Leia, much like any citizen having an encounter with the police, knows there is a severe power imbalance that puts her at a disadvantage. But, at the time of this dialogue between them, Leia still believes she has friends on the Imperial Senate. She says this to Vader. She's basically reading his badge number and telling him she has powerful friends. The Tantive 4 is a ship owned by the House of Organa. This is actually a period of transition for the Empire. In Rogue One, the CG reanimated Tarkin speaks of the Imperial Senate still existing, so some kind of checks and balances system within the Empire. In A New Hope, after Leia is imprisoned, the space Nazis have a meeting about the fact that any remnants of the Old Republic are now gone, which I guess means the Senate has fallen. And that sure happened fast, I mean, between scenes, I guess, but the point is that Leia is making her plea and playing dumb about the Death Star plans because she still thinks she has an ace up her sleeve. She doesn't, but this does explain how, even after the Rogue One retcon, her dialogue with Darth Vader still makes sense. She thinks she can get out of it, but she can't. She's doing whatever she can to get away with it, because she doesn't want to deal with that black ball thing. This looks like every interaction with the police I have ever had, whether we both knew I was a few miles per hour over the speed limit or not. Now, did the people behind Rogue One think of it this way, and does it resolve your personal headcanon? Oh, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But for me, I don't find this interaction strange in the slightest. If anything, it is all too familiar. Hi everyone, if you like what I do, please click on the orange Patreon link below. That's how this show happens. It's also the only way to request an episode. Also, please like, share, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. I'll see you next week.